Yes, we are.
Okay. Okay, let me start. So good to have you again with us in this 1-month celebration for women and girls in astronomy, as said by IAU, the International Astronomical Union. So we started this celebration since about a month, and we still have about 2 more presentations. One will be tomorrow and one will be next week, inshallah. So we are very, very active in this celebration, and we thank you as a whole to participate with us. And I believe we did ask a lot from our female research assistant and also research engineers to participate in this celebration. And thanks to them, so we have this lecture this week, and hopefully all of us are going to benefit. So today we have a special lecture about women's contribution to space. It will be given by Ms. Tarifa Al-Ka'bi and also Ms. Maryam Al-Ansari. Both of them are research engineers in the CubeSat laboratory, and hopefully they will benefit us with what you call the role of women into space. And they did have a very, very big role, especially during the lunar Apollo mission. So Tarifa and Maryam, so please, you have the stage.
Thank you, Dr. Ilyas. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Maryam Ahmed Al-Ansari, and today I'll be presenting along with engineer Tarifa Al-Ka'bi an important topic, which is women's contribution in space, and we will cover from past to present. We want to highlight the significance of their contribution, especially since some of them worked so hard and are known as people that worked behind the scenes for the longest time until recently. So, second, sorry. So there are so many amazing women working in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics careers. History is full of women who made enormous contribution to science. Some of them are well known, or you might know her, as seen in the picture, Marie Curie, and she received a Nobel Prize for her contribution in science, especially in chemistry. And there are far more a lot of women, especially when it comes to their contribution in the space sector. Now, someone once said, a bird cannot fly with one wing only. Human space flight cannot develop any further without the active participation of women. And that someone is Valentina. She is a Soviet cosmonaut, and she became the first woman to fly in space in the 1963. Valentina was chosen from a group of men and women who were selected and trained as a possible cosmonaut in the Soviet Union. Her expertise and knowledge helped her to be selected to fly to space. And not only that, but she also made history back then, where she spent 48 orbits and 71 hours. And this made her spend more time than any US astronaut combined to that date. Now, women did not have it easy, especially when it came to the space sector. So this is why it took 19 years for the next female astronaut to go to space. And it was Svetlana. Now, she was a former aviator and a Soviet cosmonaut, and she became the second woman in space and the first female to go to space twice. She also earned the spot of being the first woman to walk in space and performed a spacewalk. Now, of course, since it wasn't a common thing for a woman to be an astronaut or even be in the space sector back then, she received a lot of sexism even in space. But she managed to prove all of them wrong, and she went on the spacewalk. Now, the mission that she was on was very important, as she was going to test the universal hand tool, which was created to cut, solder, weld, and braze in space. Now, during the mission, Svetlana performed a total of 6 cuts of titanium and stainless steel, 2 coatings of anodized aluminum, 6 tests of tint and lead solder, and test cuts of titanium sample. Now, of the 57 Soviet-Russian spacewalkers through 2010, she is the only woman up to April 2020, and still the only Russian woman that walked in space. Now, moving to people that people named them as hidden figures, and there was a movie that made about them, and it was also called Hidden Figures, which I highly recommend. The mathematicians that contributed a lot to the science sector, especially in the space sector, and they were the reason why the first man orbited around the Earth. Now, we do know that, I think most of us know that John Glenn was the first man to orbit Earth. But how did he even reach to that point? It was all thanks to these female mathematicians, Katherine Johnson and Mary Jackson, who were also known as human computers back then. Now, when it comes to Katherine Johnson, she figured out the path for the spacecraft to orbit Earth and to land on the moon. She used her knowledge and it worked. Many people in her sector doubted her work and even dismissed it. But she kept working hard until she achieved her goals. She was so smart and experienced that back then, John did not even trust the computers that were created back then. And there was an incident that happened with Katherine Johnson where there was a pre-flight checklist, and John asked Katherine to do the calculations all over again. And he told her, I'm not going to trust the computer numbers, I'm going to trust your numbers. And if you tell me I'm ready to go, I'll be ready to go. So she did the calculations all over again by hand. And it turns out it was correct. And John's flight was a success. And they marked a turning point in the competition between the United States and the Soviet Union in space. Now we also have Mary Jackson. She became the first African-American female engineer to work in NASA. She earned a dual degree in mathematics and physical science at the Hampton University. In 1953, she worked as an engineer in the supersonic pressure tunnel, which you can see here. It was used to study forces on a model by generating wind maybe almost twice the speed of sound, and she managed to become the only female engineer to work on this model and analyze data from the wind tunnel experiments. Now, this is the poster of the movie that I mentioned before, Hidden Figures, and you would learn more about their accomplishments if you're interested to watch the movie. Now, moving on to another female astronaut that also made a breakthrough in the space sector, and it's Eileen Collins. She first started off as the Air Force first female flight instructor in 1979. She later became the first woman to pilot and later commanded the US Space Shuttle. And she is currently the only female shuttle commander. Now, of course, Colin is encouraging young women to become test pilots so that they can someday become shuttle commanders and maybe take her name and become shuttle commanders like her. And here she's getting ready for her flight back then. We'll move on to Peggy Whitson, and she is someone who I was honestly astonished by her accomplishments. She is a biochemist and an astronaut who was the first female commander of the International Space Station. But not only that, she was the most experienced astronaut in the history of astronauts in the US. So, she is a very powerful female when it comes to the space sector. She also holds the world record until now among American astronauts and among women for spending the most time in space. She spent approximately 665 days in total in space, and you can see her in this image. She conducted a lot of different experiments in the International Space Station. Now, for her to reach to this point, it did not just happen in a day and night. She had a very long career at NASA before her selection as an astronaut candidate. Among other positions, she worked as a biomedical operation and research at Johnson Space Center from 1989 to 1993, and was the deputy division chief of the Medical Sciences Division of the Johnson Space Center from 1993 to 1996. Now, of course, she did not get selected as an astronaut immediately. She kept applying to be an astronaut for 10 years, and she was rejected for 10 years. This did not stop her, but made her even work harder and harder to look to achieve her goals. And look at her now. She even spent 665 days in space. And she has another world record in which she did a total of 10 spacewalks, and their combined duration of 60 hours and 21 minutes was her record, and it's the highest record among any female astronaut. Peggy honestly broke so many barriers when it came to the space sector, and she still is very active when it comes to anything to do with space. Now, my colleague Tarifa will take over to talk about the rest of the amazing women in the space sector.
Thank you, Mariam. Now, moving on. If you have heard of and seen the first ever image of a black hole back in 2019, then you might have heard of the name Katie Bowman. Katie led the development of an algorithm for imaging black holes known as continuous high-resolution image reconstruction using patch priors, and was a member of the Event Horizon Telescope team that captured the first image of a black hole. She was a PhD student in computer science and artificial intelligence at MIT when 3 years ago, she did the creation of the algorithm as part of the project. And this is the first constructed image of a black hole you can see here. Now, the Event Horizon Telescope project is a global collaboration of more than 200 scientists using an array of observatories scattered around the world that acts together as a telescope the size of Earth, and collected more than a petabyte of data while staring at M87's black hole in April 2017. And it took 2 years for scientists to assemble the image that you just saw. And Katie was part of the team that made it happen. Moving on, we have Christina and Jessica Meir. Together, they are known as the first all-female space walk astronaut duo. Christina is an American engineer and NASA astronaut. She was the flight engineer on the ISS for Expedition 59, 60, and 61, and she set a record for the longest single space flight by a woman with a total of 328 days in space. While Jessica Meir is an American NASA astronaut, marine biologist, and physiologist. Together, they led the first all-female spacewalk, which was on 18th of October 2019, that you can see here. And the two astronauts replaced the power controller and made vital other modifications to the ISS with a spacewalk that lasted over 7 hours. Now, this spacewalk was supposed to take place in March, but it was postponed because NASA did not have two appropriately sized spacesuits available. And this shows some of the challenges faced by women in this field, even up until recently, where equipment are being designed with men in mind. Now, when Dr. Jessica Meir was interviewed about the historic event, she said, "This is really just us doing our jobs," hinting that such events should be normalized and common. Other important figures, we have Her Excellency Saran Amiri. She is the Minister of State for Advanced Technology, Chair for the UAE Space Agency, and Deputy Project Manager for the Emirates Mars Mission. Her Excellency started her career in sciences when she worked as programmed engineer on DubaiSat-1 and DubaiSat-2 projects. She was always interested in the aerospace engineering, but grew up at a time when the UAE did not have a space program. So it's amazing that she was able to lead the mission, the Emirates Mars mission, as the deputy manager and the science lead, which is the first uncrewed interplanetary satellite by the UAE and the first planetary science mission led by an Arab Islamic country. Next, we have Dr. Swati Mohan, which is the Guidance, Navigation, and Control Systems Engineering Group Supervisor at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory. She led the Guidance, Navigation, and Control operation for the NASA Mars 2020 mission, and she worked on the project since almost the beginning of it back in 2013. As NASA's Perseverance rover made a successful landing on the Red Planet, it was Dr. Swati Mohan who led the guidance. And she also provided much of the commentary from mission control during its intense entry, descent, and landing. And on the success of the landing, she announced, "Touchdown confirmed, Perseverance safely on the surface of Mars, ready to begin seeking the signs of past life." Now we have to mention engineer Nura Matroshi, the first female Arab astronaut that was selected from among thousands of applicants for the second batch for the UAE astronaut program in April 2021. She is a mechanical engineer with a bachelor from UAEU and a passion for space from a young age. Nura, as part of the UAE's second batch of astronauts, has started her training alongside NASA's astronaut candidate class of 2021 at the Johnson Space Center in Houston, USA, where they are training in 5 major categories over the next 2 years of the program, including operating and maintaining the ISS complex systems, training for spacewalks, developing complex robotics skills, and other important skills. And we are happy to have such examples for the young generations to look up to. So as you can see, women are playing a central role in the space sector as scientists, engineers, and astronauts. The vision of the Office for Outer Space Affairs is to, as part of the United Nations, is to bring the benefits of space to mankind. And it is committed to ensuring that those benefits reach women and girls, where they play an active role, an equal role in space science, technology, innovation, and exploration. You can see here some of the statistics from the office, where 11% of the world astronauts, 28.8% of the world's STEM researchers, 6.6% of the world's spacewalkers, and 20% of the world's space workforce is female. So there is progress from where we first started, and we hope to see that the numbers go higher and higher. Some achievements that we thought we'd mention. You can see the photo on the left, the female ISRO administration staff as they were celebrating the Mars orbital mission success, and it went viral in 2016. And this highlighted the women scientists who had worked on the mission and were in the control room at the time of the launch. On the right here, you see a picture that shows the record of four women in space at the same time, which was the first time ever to happen between May 16 and 23rd in 2010. As you might have heard before, 34% of the Emirates Mars mission team were women. And as I showed you, 33% of the applicants for the UAE astronaut program were female. And we have to mention that over 50% of the SAASST research and scientific projects team are female. So in the end, we'd like to conclude our presentation with a quote by the first Japanese woman in space. She said, "Before men and women, we are human beings. This is common sense. If you want to do something, go for it." So thank you very much for listening, and we'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you very much, Tarifa. Thank you very much, Miriam. And as you said, yes, the Sharjah Academy for Astronomy, Space and Technology is no exception. So more than 50% of our workforce in the research labs or the administration is female. So good to have you on board. And I will open the floor if anyone has any questions. So please go ahead. Any questions, please? You can write on the chat, or you can just talk directly. So you have seen by yourself, so how powerful can we be if we associate each other? This is very, very important, because space is not just one type of people doing it. Space is for everyone. That's why we need to join hands to do it. And as Miriam did mention it at the beginning, so this American women were the first people to do all of those hard calculations, and they were very, very useful into the U.S. space exploration success. So this was the beginning for everything. So I believe so what you have presented in this talk did give you right that you have a place, and no one can deny it today. Questions, please, from the audience, from the attendee. Any comment? believe everyone is shy today. So maybe the men are shy. That's what to talk about what women are doing. Okay, so if there are no questions, so let me thank again Tarifa Al-Ka'bi and Maryam Al-Ansari. Both of them are research engineers at the CubeSat Lab at the Sharjah Academy for Astronomy, Space Science and Technology. So we thank them for this very nice presentation that did give right to women in space. Yes, when they say in space, means in all fields of science, in what you call STEM, science, technology, engineering, and also mathematics. So we have them contributing in every aspect of science and also in every aspect of life. So this is very, very important. So we thank again Tarifa and Maryam for this very nice and very informative presentation, and we wish them more success in the future, inshallah. So thank you very much for all who have attended this presentation, and hopefully you got the link and you can just write your ID to get your certificate, inshallah. So thank you very much. So we see you all. So we see you tomorrow, inshallah, if possible. Assalamu alaikum.